No, not really. Actually, I'm Joe Messina, filling in for Pastor Jerry. Actually, I have a lot more hair, much better looking, a little rounder, but still, you're gonna get it today, whether you like it or not. Hey, Pastor Jerry and I spoke earlier today, and we felt that we needed to pay a little bit more honor for those who gave their lives for us to have the freedom to do, frankly, what I'm doing now, and to be able to have that freedom of speech, to be able to speak out, and those were those who gave their lives on D-Day, and actually throughout all the wars, for us to have the freedoms that we have now. Now, the Normandy landings were the landing operations associated airborne operations that happened on Tuesday, June 6, 1944. It was the Allied invasion of Normandy, Operation Overlord during World War II. It was codenamed Operation Neptune at first and often referred to as D-Day. Think about this. It was the largest seaborne invasion in history. We ended up with heavy casualties. Over 9,000 Allied soldiers were killed or wounded in the first 24 hours. Even so, D-Day is largely considered a successful beginning of the end of Hitler's tyranny regime. We had to give our lives for freedom. It doesn't happen with a handshake. It doesn't happen because we disarm. It happened because we showed might. We showed that we were willing to push through. We showed that we were willing to fight. And dare I say, we had some providence behind us. And, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, is held in high esteem by a certain political party as well. In a lot of ways, he should be. But he did the unthinkable. He actually asked the nation to pray. And he prayed for our troops and our victory.
It has come to pass with success thus far. And so, in this poignant hour, I ask you to join with me in prayer. Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic, our religion, and our civilization, and to set free a suffering humanity.
This is interesting because he makes some comments there that today might have got him thrown out of office, and being a Democrat, totally against this kind of thing today. The party has changed tremendously, if you think about it. He's asked the nation to pray. He talks about our God, our religion, not the multitude of religions. I'm not putting the other ones down. I'm just saying, think about what the man is saying here. He's asking for victory for our team, in essence. How dare you? How do we know the other team wasn't right? Maybe we should have lost the war because we're such bad people. I mean, if you listen to history, some of the people speaking about history today, we have no right being at the top of the heap or being the one seen. I won't use the word savior, but as the police for the world. Now, I know that some people will say, hey, we shouldn't be the police for the world. I kind of agree with that mindset, but you can't have it both ways. And understand, we're not just the police for the world. When there has been major events across the planet, whether volcano eruptions, Haiti being wiped out so many times, we show up and some get irritated. We show up with our warships. How dare we? Well, let me tell you what. When you've got an aircraft carrier in the bay and you've got hundreds of people that need surgery, food, and clean water, that aircraft carrier could supply electricity, clean water, food, and medical services probably better than that small little country can do. So instead of constantly beating on our military, beating on the money that we spend, why don't you pull back, get informed, and get an idea as to what's going on. But my fear, as we see often today, are the young willing to give their lives and their freedom as others have in the past? They've been beaten up. They've been taught so much. They've been taught to be selfish. Let's just be blunt about it. They've been taught to hate this country. Think about it. Hate this country that has helped so many other countries. All you hear about is the bad that we've done. How about we start looking at the good that we've done? You know, they've been told to tell all their parents if their parents aren't right in line with all the social norms, right? Teach them bad and wrong history. We teach them that life has no value. It's nothing but a blob of cells. That you're not really a boy or girl. You're, what's today, Thursday, Wednesday, whatever. You could be whatever you want to be. They have no absolutes in their life. And you wonder why they're searching and they're having so much trouble. You know, one of the things I want to touch on, and again, be thankful for the people who went before and died. And if your parents don't really care about this country, you really care about your freedoms, you need to make sure your kids learn the real history, really what this country is about, what it's always been about. Remember, it's in order to form a more perfect union, not to start the perfect union today and that's it. We're constantly, as some would use the word, evolving. We're constantly revolving this country to make things better, to fix the wrongs that we made. You know, a buddy of mine, I have my own show, and a pastor, he doesn't have a problem with this. I do a 3-hour show every night that's nationally syndicated. I have 2 black co-hosts, one's on Thursday, one on Friday. And one of the points that was brought up last week is when you hear some of these people talk about how bad it is, my co-host said, I'm sorry, I haven't seen any restaurant that I've gone to that has a line down the middle that says coloreds on this side, whites on this side. I haven't gone in any school where they have 2 water coolers where it says coloreds only, whites only. I haven't seen where any advertisement that says colors need not apply. I know some of you are taking offense to that word, but it is part of our history. Get over yourself. Although there's 3,000 other stations out there too if you're really not interested. And that's the problem is that this will now be considered hate speech because of what I just said, I'm sure. But what is hate speech? Who defines it? Does it apply to all? Does it apply to religious people? That's always a good one. Recently, many in our valley that ran for office in our local school system put down those of us that do believe in God, do believe in a supreme being. I mean, think about something. I hope this scares you. If I am it, in my own mind, if I am the supreme being, if I'm where it starts and stops, you're in a lot of trouble because I'm going to do what's right for me. I got nobody to answer to. Could care less about you. But if I got a supreme being to answer to who has a set of rules, ways that I'm supposed to live, you might have a fighting chance. Now, they ridicule people who believed in a deity, and then they go on to almost in the same breath use scripture to go after those same people. I personally believe it's a sign of mental illness. I don't know how you do that. How do you get mad over a deity that you don't believe in that doesn't exist? Taking up a lot of space in your mind, isn't it? Now, one such person accused churches of being all about the money, guns, and so on. They even asked how God or Jesus, this is a person who doesn't believe in God or Jesus, can support weapons that kill. So I'm thinking to myself, well, they need to be more specific. Do they mean knives? How about rocks? I mean, the first killing took place with a rock, so God should have probably zapped all the rocks, got rid of those. How about ropes? You mean people have been hung and tied up and thrown in the cement? My God, people have been put in cement shoes and thrown in the water. We got to get rid of that too. The Old Testament God was quick and direct on punishment. He wasn't interested in a whole bunch of excuses. Now, we were told, let the one who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one, a sword. Jesus said to his disciples during their last meal together, before Jesus was arrested and executed. This is found in Luke 22. Go read it yourself. So Jesus, that guy that, would he approve of weapons? Oh, yeah. Now, he didn't tell them to go get a sword so they could, slice the cheese. There was a reason for that sword. To defend themselves. Christians are accused of not being loving and accepting. Why? Because they don't accept your sin as truth. Again, these people refer to Scripture. I don't understand how you, of sane mind, refer to Scripture that you don't believe in a book that you don't believe in, that talks about a person you don't believe in, as truth. I just don't get it. So they don't believe, they don't study, they don't know the truth, they don't know the meaning of that Scripture that they're putting out there. They talk about God's love. God loved this, God loved that. In the Bible, there's 7 different words for love. In the English, we only have one. Love is love is love. I love to hear that. Love is love. Well, actually, no, it's not. The Bible talks about erotic love, talks about, and it's different words for, erotic type of love you'd have for your mom, love you'd have for your kids, love you have for spaghetti and meatballs, as I do, love that there's different meanings in the Bible, but they can only translate it to the word love. Now, these people speak of unconditional love, but what does that mean? Do they ever call out what it means? You love your parents no matter what? Really? You love your kids no matter what? Really? Do you love what they do? Does it matter what they do? See, I'm always going to love my kids no matter how evil they are, no matter what they do that's wrong. But I'm not going to always be accepting of what they're doing. I'm not going to always allow them to have it done. I do love my kids no matter what, but I do say no to them. And frankly, if you love your children, saying no to them is a normal thing to do. You should be doing it. I was on a show with Carrie Quashen, I think it was Monday. And we were talking about if your kids, I have 4 kids, if I didn't hear one of them say to me, I hate you, you've ruined my life at least once a week, then I wasn't doing my job. Because they're not going to like what you do to them. I have no problem telling personal stories. Most of you think you know about my life, but I'll tell you more about them. I'm not concerned with whether they like me or not. That whole thing about spare the rod, some of you think it's a beating stick, and spoil the child. It means spare the discipline and spoil the child. You can discipline your child in many ways, not just beating them with a stick. You've been conditioned to believe that when someone disciplines their child, it means they're beating their kids. No, it's wrong. How is that whole timeout thing worked out for you, worked out for society? Look around me and tell me how that's working out. You went down that Dr. Spock road, and the bottom line with that is that his kids hated him later on in life. Now, my oldest son, who's going to probably be on with Carrie in the next few weeks, he had a major issue with drugs at one point in his life. He got stuck in the whole Hollywood scene because of what he was going through and what have you. And later on, when he started to decide to come around, you know how much you really could trust a druggie all over, right? He came to the house and I knew something was up and was wrong. All his friends had thrown him out. Everybody had thrown him out of everywhere. He had absolutely no place to go. He stunk to high heaven. I made him take his clothes off at the front door. I brought him a towel. I made him leave all his stuff out by the front door. I let him take a shower. I fed him. We washed his clothes while he was taking his shower and eating. And then I sent him on his way. Because he wasn't willing to give up the drugs. He wasn't willing to look for help. He was fine with his lifestyle. How fine could he be knocking at my door asking for help? Today, he'll talk to you later about it. He's a productive young man. He's been through some things. He'll talk. I'm going to let him talk about it when he gets here. And then the biggie. Sin is sin is sin. Right? You hear these false stories about Christians throwing out their kids out of their house because they are gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, whatever. Really? You mean no Christian family throws out their kids because of violence or using drugs or stealing things from the house or whatever? That never happens, I would imagine. But Christians are human, right? We do stupid things too. Sometimes we don't know what to do. We act on impulse and emotion like anybody else does. But we've gotten away from that whole tough love thing because we don't want our kids to feel bad. We'd rather have them dead from drug overdoses. We don't want our kids to feel bad. We'd rather have them doing things that are going to hurt them physically. And that seems to be okay. And again, I say, where has that timeout generation gotten you? Lack of respect for authority? Total disagreement for the law? You have violent kids and more. Look at what they're doing out there. Did we have this same problem in the 60s or 70s? Yes, we had violent protests and what have you, but it wasn't like this. It didn't have the nasties that are going on now, right? No, we are allowed to govern ourselves. Among numerous civil laws that God gave his people as he was establishing them as an independent notion was one concerning their own homes. Some of you have heard the castle doctrine. Well, let me tell you where it comes from. If the thief is found breaking in and he has struck so that he dies. So somebody breaks into your house. You defend your house, your family, and he dies breaking into your house. God's word says, hey, there's no guilt for that. There's no guilt for that bloodshed. That's in Exodus 22. the verse actually authorizes homeowners to defend their dwelling. And the reason I bring this up is because I love all the non-Christian Christians, right? The ones that have read bits and pieces of the Bible pull out lines because they want to tell me or tell us what the Bible says without really knowing the whole story behind it. God specifically tells us to protect our stuff because it's not our stuff. Christians will tell you if they can even find their Bible, it's his stuff. We're allowed to have it. We're allowed to use it. But really, everything I have belongs to God, including my kids. So there was no guilt for the shedding of blood in this case because it was an intruder into your house coming at you. You were protecting your family. That's where the castle doctrine originally came from. It was explained by founding father James Wilson. He was a signer of the Declaration and the Constitution and an original justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Chances are he'd really have a clue as to what this meant. Don't you agree? The Declaration and the Constitution and an original justice of the Supreme Court, as I said, he declared homicide is required. Did you hear me? Founder, right? U.S. Supreme Court. Homicide is required when it's necessary for the defense of one person or house. Every man's house is deemed by law to be his castle. And the law, while it invests him with the power, places on him the commandment that he protected. I don't know. I think you got to smoke a whole bunch of dope not to really understand that. In short, if you were robbed in your home, it was not the police's fault but your own. God made you the commander of your castle. He made you the protector of your family. That's where the castle doctrine comes from. Several other Bible verses affirm what God authorized in Exodus 22. For example, Jesus noted in Luke 11:21 that when a strong man, fully armed, guards his own home, fully armed, I don't know, AK-15, whatever, I don't know, whatever you want, his goods are in peace. In the book of Nehemiah, when the lawless brigades were on the loose, God's people went about armed, and every man had his sword girded at his side, because self-defense in the Bible is mandated. Jesus at one point even tells you, if you don't have a sword, sell your tunic and go get one so that you can protect your family. So those of you who like to run around saying, we're supposed to be pacifists, Jesus wouldn't approve of this, maybe you should actually study and not just read the Bible. What do you think? It's just a thought. Joe Messina filling in today for Pastor Jerry Cook, non-Pastor Joe Messina. And we'll be back in a few minutes. A lot more coming up. God bless. If you got to go, have a great rest of the day. We are back. I thought we were back a minute ago, but hey, whatever. I don't mind repeating myself. Always a pleasure to have you with me. I appreciate your time with us today. I am not Jerry Cook, as you can see if you're watching, I guess, up on Facebook. I dare say much better looking, a little larger than he is, and a lot more hair than he has. I'm sure he'll have something to say about that next week. But appreciate your time with us. Again, you can catch us every Wednesday, 2 o'clock. The the Pulpit. My guy, where's my paper?
Politics on the Pulpit.
Oh, well, thanks. There you go. I'm going to leave, Alex. You can take over from here. So,
sure thing. All right. So, what do we got?
Alex Haberbush joins me today. He's the president of LexRex Institute. And Alex, appreciate your time with me today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me on again.
When you get him on the line next time, say, Jerry, what is it? Is it something I did? Because you keep putting me on with Joe, and I don't know. Maybe it's something I did. I don't know, but you poor guy.
Yeah, I don't know. Seems to just line up that way.
Yeah. So listen, before we get rolling, because I'll forget to ask you, why don't you tell people what the LexRex Institute is?
Yeah, so LexRex Institute is a legal nonprofit dedicated to upholding the Constitution of the United States and specifically holding government officials accountable to their sworn duty to the Constitution. LexRex is Latin for the law is king, because we believe the law is our only king, none of our leaders. They are not king, they are subject to the law.
Okay, cool. And people can find you and offer help. Sometimes it takes a few dollars to do what you do.
Definitely. Money's a really good way to help, a way to join the fight. We do need to be able to fund legal work. Legal work can get very, very expensive.
Oh, yeah.
And we try to avoid passing those costs on to our clients. so that they can do things at low cost or often even free. So we do need contributions to fund that. We also have volunteer projects as well. We're working on getting started on something we call the Open Book Project, which is an effort to audit different school curricula so that you can know what your kids are actually being taught. If you're interested in reading some school books and reporting on them, you can check on all that and the other things I've described on our website, lexrex.org. That's LEXREX.org. And you can check out our educational stuff there, too. We have podcasts, we have videos we put up on YouTube and Rumble, articles. You could spend all day there.
And people need to get informed. You got to stop spoon feeding people. You need to get in there.
We can't defend our Constitution if people don't know it.
Bingo.
It's just impossible.
Yeah.
Our founding fathers set up a country that was designed to operate with a well-educated population. And they didn't mean educated just in, everybody can do trigonometry. They meant that they would know about their civil liberties and they would be able to defend them. So, we're trying to kind of pick up where public education system really dropped the ball.
Oh, yeah, but, as well as I do, the school curricula isn't there. And, some of the new books that I've been through. But let me ask you, you brought it up. I wasn't even going to go down this road, but it's a great topic, which is we're seeing more and more of, just say it, fake history being put in these books and what have you.
And that's the first subject that we're auditing with the Open Book Project, because history seems to be the one that is most commonly, or at least most pervasively, attacked in our education system right now. There was a quotation from one of the guys from the old Soviet Union, I forget which one, who said that if you want to destroy a people, you destroy their history, because that's their sense of collective identity. That's the bedrock that they reach back to. Your history teaches you where you come from, where you're going, and really, I think that's going to be a main target of attack. They've already gotten religion out of the schools. That used to be the cultural bedrock,
right.
But they've found that hasn't been good enough for them. So they're going for our history next.
But Alex, we get these books from the state, and I know you're familiar with this. I'm on a school board in a fairly large district in California, and you get these books from the state. That's it. You've got these X amount of books to choose from. If changes need to be made, or if there's things in the books that aren't true, aren't right, what can a district, a parent, a teacher for that matter, who may not want to teach it, what can they do about it?
Well, there's actually a lot of options. As you may know, actually you may not know, because a lot of the school board members that I've worked with kind of have the wool pulled over their eyes a lot of times by the attorneys that are supposed to be working for them, really end up working for the superintendent. But school board is responsible for choosing curriculum. Oftentimes, depending on a county's charter, depending on the way that different regulations are laid out in that county, they can go beyond the curriculum that's already been approved. There are sometimes hoops they have to jump through to do that. But what it really takes is will from the electorate and will from the members of the school board to make those changes. And first step to doing that is having information, because I think that if people knew what was actually in these books that they were approving, I think they might be a lot less eager to approve them.
Well, again, as a school board member, we're given so much pre-approved books on certain subjects that come down from the State Board of Education, right?
Yeah.
So we get, I like to say, we get 3 books to choose from. Here's 3 different versions of American history that the state has approved. Which one do you guys want to use? That's what we normally get.
And your latitude on going, beyond what the State Board of Education says is going to vary based on how your county is chartered, what state you're in a California district, you said?
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know which.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles.
County.
Ooh.
Yeah,
you're kind of hamstrung there.
Yeah, right.
But, I don't want to give legal advice over the air, but if you talk to me off the air, there may be some options we could pursue.
Okay, but generically, boards still have the ability to maybe, I don't want to say manipulate because people take it the wrong way, but to actually maybe work the curriculum a little bit. Right,
because even if you're bound to pick, say, one of the 3 books, teachers are allowed to use supplemental curriculum for teaching their classes. That's the way. I know teachers who will have one textbook. They say, this is the one I use to teach the exam that we have to do to meet the national standards. But here's this other one that I'm using too. And if they have support from the school board in doing that, then they certainly feel a lot freer to be able to teach history the way it actually happened, as opposed to the way that they are now being forced to teach it.
Right, because right now you've got the 1619 history being pushed, and I see it creeping into the books. you could conceive, and we're talking conceivably here. You're not giving me legal advice. I realize that,
Yeah,
but
got to be careful
you
with
could
that.
have a supplemental history kind of book that shows that kind of contradicts that's coming out of the main textbook. Could you not?
Yeah, absolutely. In most circumstances, that's going to be totally fine.
Okay. See, I learned something today that I'm glad I did this show. I'm glad you showed up. Anyhow, hey, let's have some fun with the presidential race, which I find just amazing. So
Yeah.
I was I was talking to a few people about this. We are politics in the pulpit, people, so deal with it. Mike Pence, who I know some people who are good friends with him and know him well. He's a good, godly guy, and I get that. But
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting today when he came out in this speech. God and Jesus have been mentioned more times in that speech than I've heard in 16 other people talk about it. I almost, as a Christian, and what I consider to be a committed Christian, I almost took offense at it to a certain point. It's like, get on with it. I know
Uh-huh.
you prayed about it.
Well,
You think God's driving you to do this, and that's great. But what are you going to do for us? And you hear the other
right.
ones say the same thing.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's there are a lot of voters in this country for whom their religion is extremely important. It informs every decision they make every day. That's certainly true of me. I think that's true of you as well. So, I think that candidates see they can kind of prey on that, and they can hopefully sway a large proportion of the electorate to vote for them because we want godly candidates to be in office.
Oh, yeah.
But recognizing which ones are godly is not as easy as seeing which ones use the word God and Jesus most
Right.
often.
Exactly. It gets everybody all excited. And I would say the same thing. But what have they done? Look, I don't care where you stand on Trump, but I'm bringing up his name because some people said, yeah, he's a Christian. Some people say, no, he's not a Christian. I go, well, think about what he did. Go down the list of the things he did to help give more freedom of religion, if you would. Will these guys do the same thing? We've seen people like, George W.
Right.
Bush pretty much do absolutely nothing for the religious community. So, throwing that name around is not doesn't give me any warm fuzzy at all. Matter of fact, it makes my little spider senses go up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I won't. Those of our listeners who I think know some of my past legal work can probably guess I'm not a huge fan of Mike Pence. After some of the stuff that happened a few years ago, I won't go too much into depth on that.
Yeah.
But I think he did not pull through where it was needed.
No. No. Listen. Some people will say that him. It's funny because you just said it a little while ago. If people, maybe if we started to teach the Constitution in school again, that would be really great. And even talk about some of the letters that our founding fathers wrote back and forth to each other. Mike Pence had the authority to send those votes back to the state.
Yeah.
He had the constitutional right to say,
unquestionable.
I'm not
in the
accepting
text of
this.
the Constitution.
Yeah.
They can they can debate the legal merits all they want, but it's right there, plain black and white ink.
Right.
Unquestionable.
And the funny thing about it is, if people would listen to the reality behind it, he could simply say, look, there's so much aggravation around this. There's so much gray area around this. We're going to send it back to the state of Wisconsin's legislature. Let them decide what the truth is, what the reality is, and then send it back to us. And that would have been perfectly legal and within the confines of the Constitution. But we allowed.
There'd been requests. Pennsylvania state legislature had requested for the electors to be sent back so that they could make an evaluation of whether or not they were lawful.
Yeah.
And that request was basically ignored. Now, if you look at the Constitution, it says that electors will be appointed in the manner that the legislature thereof shall direct.
Yep.
That was not followed in the 2020 election. The legislatures were largely stripped of that power. And, in my opinion, I don't want to dwell too much on the past here. But in my view, Mike Pence absolutely had the power to make sure that they got the oversight that the Constitution says they're supposed to have.
Look,
he dropped the ball there.
When I go down this kind of road, I always say to people, like, I don't have a crystal ball that works, right? So I don't know if any of this would have made a difference overall. But when you have places like, I think it was Nevada, who received 72,000 ballots in that they never mailed out, that should at least throw a red flag up for somebody to go, okay, let's check these out and make sure that they're real and that they're right and that kind of thing. There's so many little spotty things like that you have to sit back and say, there's an issue here. And how do we fix that for next time?
You're right. But the real danger, I think, in the wake of 2020 is that this idea that people who would want the empowered lawfully empowered, lawfully capable elements of our government to look at the result of an election, weigh the facts, and make a lawful determination of what happened. The idea that we ought to block that because the media has already declared a winner, I think is very, very dangerous for our republic. I don't understand why people who want to ask questions and examine evidence of an election were treated as an enemy, or still, in many cases, called conspiracy theorists. Yeah, they may be totally wrong. It may be the case that there's no good evidence that the election was mishandled.
Agreed.
I don't understand why wanting someone to weigh that evidence and actually make that decision is something that's regarded as a danger by anyone.
I totally agree with you. There's no reason. There's nothing to fear if you know you got it right? I mean,
right.
If you're just looking for the truth.
And they can repeat up and down, Trump lost, whatever. I think their number's up to like 60, all 60 of his election cases or whatever they say. It's totally ignoring the fact that most of those cases, vast majority, I think, 50 plus of the 60 that they're citing, never made it to the point where they could do any kind of evidentiary evaluation at all.
Yep.
They were dismissed either because the timing on the case was bad or because the person bringing the case wasn't the right person to bring it. They didn't even look at the evidence. So to use that to say that this has been summarily dismissed by everybody is just blatantly misleading, and I'm sure they know that.
Well, between you and a few other of my legal friends, I've learned a lot about why the Supreme Court turns things down. And to your point, the person bringing it forward has no standing, or they're jumping the process. The Supreme Court apparently doesn't like it when you jump the process.
No.
They want you to fall. And I get it. I mean, I very much get it.
Yeah, other lower courts, too. The same issues come up. The one that was the most ridiculous that we saw in 2020 was there were some courts where we would bring the case prior to the election. The court would say the case is not yet ripe. What that means is there's not yet a case or controversy. No harm has occurred to anybody. The court can't remedy anything because the election hasn't taken place yet. Same exact case. Bring it to the same exact court after the election, and the court says, the case is now moot, which means that we can't give you a remedy because the harm's already taken place, and we can't prevent it from happening in the future. So what was that like? Was it an hour after the polls closed but before the count was finished when this case actually would have been appropriate to bring, according to this court? Just insane.
Well, and that's where if the VP had done his job at the time, he could have sent it back to the legislature and say, you had issues, you had problems, it's a gray election, fix it. Figure out what you did or didn't do, and then send it back to us.
He wouldn't even have to be that controversial. He could say, some people are claiming that there's an ambiguous result of this election because we believe confidence in the process is of paramount importance because that's what prevents civil wars in this country. Look at it again. Make sure the result's good. We're sure that you'll just verify what they've already found, but send it back to us once you have. There's absolutely no reason to leave a huge proportion of the population questioning the result of an election if you are really genuinely that sure of the result, like they say they were.
Bingo. No, seriously. When we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about some of the education issues going on here in California. The state legislature consistently passes laws that just fly in the face of parents, what they can and can't do, what they're allowed to see, not allowed to see. The law that came up basically that a school board member or the board can actually clear out the room because parents are being disruptive. Well, what is disruptive? They don't even give you a guidelines as to what that means. Does that mean parents are applauding or booing or doing whatever?
Well, we're actually taking an appeal on exactly this subject right now.
Perfect.
It's because it's very ambiguous.
We want people to come back,
and
so hang tight.
As long as somebody from the school can say this student acted in a disruptive manner, they seem to win every time. So we're challenging that legal standard. We'll let you know how it goes when we have a result from that.
Oh, I want to run down a whole bunch of stuff with you because
sure, yeah. One last thing on the January 6th
Go ahead,
is John Eastman, who was Trump's lawyer that assisted him in speaking with Vice President Pence and some of the other strategy involved. His case with the California bar is coming up in a couple of weeks, and I know that his attorney's fees are getting really expensive, so he's a friend of mine. I told him that I would let people know about his Give, Send, Go account. Okay. So that's givesendgo.com Eastman. If you want to help him to continue to defend our country and our Constitution, he's about as great a champion as there is in this country. The money couldn't go to somebody better.
Hey, we got to go for a quick break because we believe in capitalism around here. We'll be back in a few minutes, Alex. Don't go far. A lot more with Politics of the Pulpit when we return. Welcome back to what I consider another session of sanity right here on Politics of the Pulpit. And filling in today for Pastor Jerry Cook is non-pastor Joe Messina. Again, I'm just doing this because I know it needles him, right? I'm a little larger than him, but I have a lot more hair and I'm much better looking. Anyhow, we'll appreciate your time with us today. Again, Politics of the Pulpit heard here on your hometown station every Wednesday at 2:00. Jerry's got some great guests on, great things going on here, and I've got Alex Holberbush on with me. He's the president of Lex Rex Institute.
That's right.
Yeah, we're having a great conversation around, education. I mean, parents are feeling like they don't have a right, and I don't care what anybody says, they still feel like they don't have a right to speak up for their kids. And this is why it's so important that when you go into an election cycle, that you truly elect the people that will give the parents a right to speak, will give the parents a voice in these districts and stick up for the parents and the kids as well. And I was talking to you about the new law here in California. I think it took place this last January, where you can clear a room if there's disruption or somebody is being disruptive, but there's no guidelines as to what disruptive is there?
Right. Well, no, they just use the word whether, causing a disruption, and that's pretty much at the discretion of the teachers at this point. So we're actually bringing an appeal right now that's going to challenge that whole legal standard. We think that there's unconstitutional vagueness issues there, as well as some other issues with the law. Probably can't talk about that too much since it is active litigation, yeah,
the guidelines of this.
It basically gives them carte blanche, do whatever the heck they want.
Yeah. Well, me being a trustee, and I look at this and I say to myself, okay, somebody burps, somebody claps their hands over something. What is that disruption? Somebody needs to give us guidelines to work with, because I know some boards have taken that to the degree of if there's too many applause after speakers step up on a particular issue, they'll clear the room.
Well, and that board is actually better than most, because at least they decided something about what constitutes a disruption. Most of the time what we're seeing, these boards don't say anything. So if the teacher claims that it was a disruption, that goes. Basically allowing these teachers to be miniature tyrants in their own classroom with very little accountability. So we're trying to hold them to account here, and we'll let you know how that case turns out.
Well, it's a lot of work all the way around. I mean, even parents who come up, and you know how the law is that when they come up during public session, they ask questions, and we're not allowed to go back and forth with them. And I get that, and I get the reasoning behind that.
Yeah.
But when they ask for things to be put on the agenda, when they ask for certain issues to come up that they want to be responded to, they've sent 22 and a half emails for a FOIA request, and they're being blown off. And you really can't find anybody to take these cases on.
Well, and these boards are supposed to be accountable to the public that they're serving. And when they can unilaterally decide the public's being disruptive and therefore don't have a right to exercise their voice, that's a real problem. That's a real problem.
No, and I realize, right, but the generic answer to that is, well, you can replace them in an election. Well, that's great. Maybe you can't. And I guess my question is that sometimes parents will send requests for information, or, they'll get a hold of the district office or what have you, and they don't really get a response. There is no response.
Well, one of the things that I want to respond to that election thing, because one of the things that really irks me is this whole attitude that that's the only kind of accountability that our public officials have. Is you elect them, and then for however long their term is, they can do whatever the heck they want. They don't have to answer to anybody. That's not correct. They continue to be subject to our laws after they are in office, and there continue to be methods to hold them accountable. We want to make sure that those methods are ones that are known so people can make use of them, and ones that are not, that they're not shrinking ways that parents can do that or that other people can do that. We want to make sure as many avenues are possible, because we think that more eyes on any public official are always going to be better, and more methods of accountability are always going to be more effective.
All right, Alex, you got about 35 seconds. Tell people about your organization, where they can find it, and how they can help.
My organization is called the Lex Rex Institute. The name is Latin for the law is king, because exactly what we were just talking about, that we don't think that public officials are our king. We believe that the law is our king, and that they are subject to it. They have to follow it. So wherever we can, we'll bring cases and also educate the public to ensure that that remains the case and that our Constitution remains our highest law, not the people who are administering our government.
Well, that's great, Alex. Hey, thanks for being with me today. God bless you for what you're doing, and really keep up the good work. Again, we need more people out there like you that know the law. They're not afraid to apply it, and help out the people that it's hurting because they don't know it.
Well, visit our website, because our goal is to make a lot more like us. We want an army to hold these folks accountable.
Perfect.
So lexrex.org, check out our educational materials, and we think that we'll be able to empower you to hold them accountable.
All right, perfect. Thanks a lot. Hey, thanks for listening today to Politics in the Pulpit. Pastor Jerry Cook will be back with you next week, and you'll get a break from me. God bless. Have a great rest of the day.